Why does God save one and not the other? What are we referenced as in the Old Testament? And who are the enemies of God? And what is their fate? Hi, my name is Celeste and welcome back to my Bible study series. Today I will be sharing my insight on 2 Kings 11 through 13. So, let's begin. So, what happens in chapter 11? Here is the rundown. King Ahaziah, the king of Judah, is now dead. So his mother has the bright idea to take the throne for herself. But unfortunately for her, Ahaziah had sons. So Ahaziah's mother, Athaliah, decides that she'll just kill off her grandbabies and the rest of the royal family. But before she could kill them all, Sheiba, the sister of the now dead king, takes the child destined for the throne and hides him in the temple for 6 years. This child's name is Joash. Eventually, Joash was anointed king of Israel, and when Athaliah heard this, she was mad and threw a fit. In her anger, she went down to the palace grounds, and there she died. Finally, Joash took the throne, and everyone was happier for it. A couple of questions came to mind while reading this, such as what made Sheiba risk her life to save her nephew? And why was Joash the only one saved? To answer these questions, we have to look back. Let's start with the first question. Why did Sheiba risk her life to save this 1-year-old prince? Well, Sheiba was a woman who saw God's wrath carried out on her brother. She saw the dangers of following the ways of evil people, and that God is the defender of the helpless. She knew that God will repay blood for blood. Seeing her own family slain by a man God raised up for that purpose, the fear of the Lord was with her. I believe Sheiba's life led to this righteous act. She was already facing death in accordance to man's will, so she sought the will of God. God uses all of our life experiences to reveal himself to us. It is not a grace afforded to everyone to experience the fear of God. But when you do, there is an expectation of punishment for wrongdoing. Sheiba saw how one man's act could destroy a bloodline, but righteous actions are rewarded. Now, my next question. Why did she only save Joash? Truly, the answer I have is grace. Undeserving and incomprehensible grace. Because this boy was not only saved, but grew up in the temple of the Lord safely hidden for 6 years. On top of this, he was always guarded by hundreds of men who surrounded the temple. And of course, becoming king of Judah at 7 years old. We have received God's grace, but the measure of that grace is up to God. Joash had more grace on his life than his brothers. Why though? Because God wanted it that way. The reality of God's grace is the beginning of humbleness, because it is out of our control and completely up to God. Okay, now let's get into chapter 12. In chapter 12, we see the temple of the Lord being repaired, but it doesn't come without its hiccups. Joash tells the high priest Jehoiada to collect money from all the treasurers to finance the repairs of the temple. But after some years, no repairs had been done to the temple. So the king asked the high priest what's going on, and ultimately the priests decided to abandon the temple repairs and turn it over to supervisors the priests and royal secretaries had appointed. The Bible notes one important thing in verse 15. It says, they did not require an accounting from those to whom they gave the money to pay the workers, because they acted with complete honesty. A rare occasion for mankind. Now, we'll come back to this later, but it's something to think about. After all the repairs had been finished, the king of Aram went to attack Judah. But before they could, King Joash gave the king of Aram all the sacred things of the temple, all the gold in the temple treasury and in the royal palace. And so the king of Aram left and did not attack Jerusalem. Now, let's talk about those honest men. You know how there are certain things you can't do in front of people? For example, a thief won't steal in front of you. He'll hide and conceal what he's doing. Why? Because of your presence. Or how you clean your house before guests come over. Why? Because you don't want to be seen as unclean. Or just think of any kid who does wrong in secret but acts like an angel when they're around others. I believe these honest men acted as such because they knew the Lord was watching. They felt his presence and chose to do right. I couldn't help but think of when I am found out to be a Christian and everyone acts a little different around me. They apologize when they curse, feel judged when I speak, and some people choose just to not like me at all. I connected this with the honest men in the temple because we are now called the temple of the Lord. Of course, we should expect people to act differently towards us. We are housing the spirit of holiness. When I asked you in the beginning of this video, what are we referenced as in the Old Testament, did you have an answer? Yes, that is your answer. We are the temple of the Lord. We should expect to be treated differently, and we should expect others to respond to the Holy One who dwells in us. Don't see it as a bad thing. See it as a reminder that your name is written in heaven. Last but not least, we have chapter 13. Now, chapter 13 has some king successions, but I want to focus on the mystery of Elishas Bones. The Israelites threw a dead man in Elisha's tomb. Elisha had already died and his bones were there in the tomb. But when the dead man was thrown in the tomb, he touched Elisha's bones and came back to life. Now, I would love to hear what you have to say about this miracle. But one thing that this miracle shows me is that it is not by man's will, waving of the hands, calling on the name of the Lord, long and loud prayers, that miracles are performed. It is strictly the work of God. It is easy to see Elisha as a powerful man, but this miracle showed me that it was not Elisha that held the power, nor was the power in his bones. It was the spirit by which Elisha lived by, the spirit of life. If you believe God has spoken through me, subscribe and like this video. I plan to post regularly, so if you're interested in this content, you are welcome to join me on my journey to the throne. God bless you, and may God perfect you in the faith and lead you with love, compassion, and much grace.